The sterile scent of rubbing alcohol and the steady beep of the EKG machine had become the quiet rhythm of my days. My name is Kenneth Adams, 32 years old, a physical therapist assistant who has spent his life helping patients learn to walk, move, and hope again. My ambition wasn't just about climbing a career ladder. It was about building something solid, something lasting, for my wife, Sarah. She was the light cutting through my exhaustion, the reason I picked up double shifts and came home aching yet grateful. We lived modestly, counting every dollar, saving quietly and patiently for the down payment on our first home. I believed our biggest challenges were the overpriced housing market, the late nights, and the fatigue that clung to my bones. But Sarah always grounded me, reminding me of my worth even when my own family questioned my choices. With her beside me, I thought I was ready for anything. The weight of my ambition pressed on my shoulders every morning before the sun did. Being a physical therapist's assistant wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. My patients relied on me to help them stand, walk, reclaim their lives inch by inch. And every hour I spent bending, lifting, and teaching someone to move again was another brick in the future Sarah and I were building. Our apartment was small, too small, the kind where you could touch the kitchen counter while sitting on the couch. But Sarah never complained. She worked double shifts as a waitress while finishing her degree, and somehow still found the energy to remind me why our sacrifices were worth it. Her support was my oxygen. My family, though, that was a different story. Sunday dinners at my grandmother Eleanor's mansion were a ritual endured more than enjoyed. Eleanor was the kind of wealthy that didn't just show in her jewelry. It lived in her tone, her posture, her expectations. She believed people were either born into class or clawing desperately to pretend they belonged. Sarah, in her eyes, was the latter. That evening, as Sarah placed a bowl of salad on the table, Eleanor offered one of her trademark compliments dipped in poison. "So, Sarah, still serving tables? I suppose college must be difficult when one is distracted with other priorities." Her eyes flicked toward me. Sarah smiled politely, but I felt the sting. I forced a smile. "She's graduating next semester, Grandma. She's working hard." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Yes, Kenneth, you're working hard. I just hope your focus isn't being diverted. Real men build businesses, not chase part-time dreams." The entire table went silent. I defended Sarah, and she squeezed my hand under the table, trying to steady me. But my chest burned. It wasn't just disapproval. It was disdain, the kind that eats at your confidence long after the room goes quiet. What made it worse was the secret I was carrying, a huge one. I had secured a major loan pre-approval for my own clinic. The paperwork wasn't finalized yet, but it was the biggest step of my life. I wanted to tell Sarah especially. I wanted her to feel the victory with me. But Eleanor, she'd twisted into another lecture about reckless ambition. After dinner, I walked down the hall to grab my coat and paused when I heard voices. Eleanor and my mother Maria, whispering, "She's just a pretty little gold digger," Eleanor said sharply. "Mom, that's not fair." "Open your eyes, Maria. He's blinded by her, and he's throwing away his future." My heart dropped to my stomach. Gold digger. Sarah. That wasn't a concern. It wasn't guidance. It was malice. And the worst part, that same week, I'd started noticing strange, small withdrawals from my savings account. Nothing huge, just enough to unsettle me, enough to make me question things. But what I didn't know was, everything was about to spiral. The first missing $42 didn't bother me. Banks make mistakes. Systems glitch. People misclick. But the second withdrawal came 3 days later. Then a third. Then a fourth. Each is small enough to slip under fraud detection. Each is precise enough to terrify me. I found myself hunched over my laptop late at night, the glow of the screen reflecting off Sarah's sleeping face. I should have been resting beside her, but instead, I was staring at numbers that refused to add up. My clinic fund, my dream, was bleeding slowly, quietly, intentionally. I pulled out a notebook and started a secret ledger. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every cent by the end of the week. The total missing amount was over $3,800, enough to delay the clinic paperwork, enough to send a cold spike of fear straight through my spine. At first, I thought it was an external hack. Maybe someone got my card info, skimmed it, and cloned it. But the timing of the withdrawals was clean, recurring, patterned. Then Sarah asked me the question I was dreading. "Kenneth, what's going on? You're barely sleeping." I froze. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to unload the fear, the frustration, the betrayal clawing at me. But Eleanor's voice slithered back into my memory like a poison. "She's just a pretty little gold digger." And suddenly, I hesitated, not because I believed her, but because I was terrified Sarah would think I believed her. That tiny doubt thought, I hated myself for even feeling that, made me sick. "I'm just tired," I lied, forcing a smile. "Long week." Sarah didn't push, but the disappointment in her eyes lingered longer than her gaze. Determined to figure this out privately, I set up enhanced bank alerts, text notifications for every transaction. Then I went back through my logs. That's when a chilling pattern emerged. Every withdrawal was made hours after I visited Eleanor's house. Specifically, after using her Wi-Fi. Had someone intercepted something? Did you access my email? Gotten into my online banking? My pulse thundered in my ears as I stared at the timestamp. There was no way this was random. I confronted my mother the next day in her kitchen. Her back was turned, washing dishes, humming like it was a normal morning. "Mom, do you know anything about the fiduciary services fee on my account? Or the withdrawals?" She stiffened, then forced a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Kenny, you're overworked. You're paranoid. Maybe talk to the bank." I watched her shoulders tremble, not from fear, from guilt. Something was very, very wrong. But what I didn't know was, this was only the beginning of the betrayal. Our anniversary arrived like a small breath of light in a week otherwise suffocating with worry. I couldn't give Sarah the world aught yet, but I could give her something meaningful, something that showed her I still saw her, still cherished her. So I bought a vintage locket. It wasn't extravagant. It wasn't flashy, but it was beautiful, soft gold, delicately engraved, with enough history to feel like it carried a story of its own, a story I wanted to weave into ours. At the family gathering, I slipped it around her neck. Her eyes shimmered. She whispered, "Kenneth, it's perfect." But before that moment could settle, before joy could breathe, Eleanor's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Well, isn't that convenient?" she scoffed. "Another expensive trinket. I suppose Sarah has quite the influence on your wallet." Sarah stiffened beside me. I felt her heart sink. Eleanor wasn't finished. "You should be saving for your future, Kenneth, not wasting money on distractions that won't last." Her cold gaze slid towards Sarah like poison. Blood pounded in my ears. "Grandma, it wasn't expensive," I said sharply, and Sarah didn't ask for anything. She raised an eyebrow. "Didn't she? Or does she just know how to look helpless enough for you to spend without thinking?" The room went silent. Then her real agenda slipped out. "So, Kenneth," she said lightly, swirling her wine, "where exactly does your clinic loan stand? What collateral did you use? Did the bank accept your savings as proof of liquidity?" Her questions were too precise, too invasive. It wasn't curiosity, it was reconnaissance. Sarah touched my arm, sensing my tension. I forced a calm breath. "It's delayed," I lied smoothly. "Market instability. Paperwork backlog." Her eyes narrowed, studying me, calculating. For the first time, I wondered, why did she care so much? Later that night, when we returned home, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, turning the locket in her fingers. She wasn't crying, but that made it worse. "Why do I always feel like I have to defend who I am?" she whispered. "Is loving you really that suspicious to them?" My chest tightened. "Sarah, you don't have to defend anything. You've given me everything. They don't understand us." I held her, but the guilt gnawed at me. I was hiding something from him, something enormous. My family had planted a seed of doubt, and even though I didn't believe them, the weight of the secret made me feel complicit. After she fell asleep, I opened my laptop again, needing answers. And that's when I saw it. Another withdrawal, the same amount, same time, same label, fiduciary services fee. I didn't have a fiduciary. I didn't have any investment services. I didn't have anyone authorized to charge my account. The truth wasn't just lurking. It was flashing in bold letters across my screen, and it was getting worse. But what I didn't know was, this was only the next step in their plan. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table long after Sarah left for work, staring at my laptop like it was a ticking bomb. Fiduciary services, fee. The phrase looped in my mind like a taunt. I clicked into the transaction details again. Same amount, same day of the month, same routing number. So I traced it. At first, it seemed like a dead end, one of those generic financial labels banks use for outsourced processing. But then, a different number caught my eye. A secondary routing code is embedded in the transfer metadata. I copied it, searched it, a name popped up. Harrison & Co., Private Investments. My stomach twisted. Harrison? Mr. Harrison was practically family. He'd handled my grandmother Eleanor's investments for as long as I could remember her estate planning, her trust accounts, her endless list of diversified assets. He was old school, scrupulous, almost annoyingly ethical. He wasn't the type to touch a client's account without explicit written consent, which could only mean one thing: someone permitted him. My hands shook slightly as I dialed his office, masking my number. When the receptionist picked up, I asked a simple question. Can you confirm which of your clients are using the fiduciary services subscription tier? A long pause. She checked, came back. I'm sorry, sir. That information is confidential. Only Ms. Eleanor Adams and Ms. Maria Adams have that level of service. My breath left my body. Eleanor and my mother. No one else? That was it. Key connection I didn't want. My pulse hammered as memories began stitching themselves together. Eleanor's invasive questions about my assets. Maria insisted I was paranoid. Those family dinner nights where I logged onto her Wi-Fi, never thinking twice. God, it wasn't just possible. It was likely. Suddenly, the missing money wasn't a mystery. It was a message. A manipulation. A way to keep me dependent, under their thumb, doubting myself, doubting Sarah. My chest tightened as the truth settled in, suffocating and sharp. Could my own mother really be siphoning my savings? Was Eleanor pulling the strings like a puppet master, using family loyalty as leverage? The betrayal burned deeper than I expected. I felt alone, utterly, completely alone. But isolation has a strange way of turning into clarity. If they were stealing from me quietly, methodically, then I needed proof, indisputable, undeniable proof. So I set a trap. I transferred nearly all my remaining savings into a new hidden account under a different bank. Then I left a small amount, just enough to tempt them, end the old account, and I activated every alert the bank offered. If someone touched even a penny, I would know instantly. When Sarah got home that night, I forced a calm smile. I hated lying to her, but I needed time. Took on a consulting gig, I said softly. It'll affect how I move money around for a bit. Just trust me. She kissed my cheek. Always. But as she walked away, the guilt threatened to crush me. Because what I didn't know was, the trap I set was about to expose far more than I ever imagined. I drove to Eleanor's estate with a knot tightening in my stomach. The gravel crunched under the tires like warning signs I refused to hear. Today wasn't a normal visit O'Day. I needed answers. And I needed to hear them from the source. When Eleanor opened the door, her smile was crisp, practiced, and cold. Kenneth, you look tired. Finally realizing the clinic isn't realistic, there it was, the bait. I forced a defeated shrug. Maybe you're right, Grandma. Maybe I should stop chasing something that's dragging us down. A stable job might be smarter. Her eyes brightened with concern, but with victory. I'm relieved to hear that. Your ambitions were becoming burdensome. Every word stung, but I kept my posture slouched, my voice soft, just broken enough to appear believable. We sat in her sunroom, sipping tea I couldn't taste. Eleanor talked endlessly about the family business, the safer path, the proper future. I nodded through every subtle insult, letting her believe she was winning. Use the restroom before you leave, she said airily. You look pale. I excused myself, slipping down the hallway, heart pounding. But halfway there, voices drifted from the study ARP, whispers, frantic breaths. I froze Maria. I can't keep doing this, Mom, she said, her voice trembling. It's wrong. You'll find out eventually. Eleanor's tone cut through her like a blade. It's for his own good, Maria. That girl Sarah is a distraction. Kenneth needs direction, structure. We're helping him. Helping, my mother choked out. We siphoned off thousands. Eleanor, you're paying my debt with his money. And the rest was necessary, Eleanor snapped. He can't afford a clinic. This way, he'll listen. He'll stay close. He'll stop chasing childish dreams. My vision blurred. My heartbeat roared in my ears. They were talking about my money. Our future, Sarah, my life, and they sounded justified. My hand slipped into my pocket on instinct, fingers fumbling for my phone. I opened the recorder and hit the button, capturing the tail end of the conversation as Eleanor delivered the final blow. He doesn't need a wife dragging him down. He needs us. And by the time he realizes what we did, it'll be too late to change anything. Maria whimpered. He'll hate me. He'll forgive you, Eleanor said flatly. He always does. I stood there, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. That recording those cold, cruel words was the truth. The proof, the betrayal made flesh. The fiduciary services fee wasn't a mistake. It wasn't fraud from the outside. It was them. My family, siphoning my dreams, steering my life, erasing my independence. I walked back into the hallway, breath unsteady. Because what they didn't know was, I had just caught them. I drove home in a daze, the audio recording echoing in my skull like a damnation I couldn't unhear. Every word Eleanor and my mother whispered burrowed into my chest. Accusations, manipulation, control. And through it all, guilt gnawed at me. Because for one dark second, I had wondered if Sarah might be involved. Opening the apartment door felt like stepping into a confessional. Sarah stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes red from worry. The second she saw me, frustration spilled over. Kenneth, what is going on with you? She snapped, voice trembling. You've been distant for weeks. You're hiding something. Is it me? Are you having doubts? About the clinic. About us. Her words were knife-hot because she meant to hurt me, but because I deserved every one of them. No, I breathed. It's not you. It was never you. I guided her to the couch, hands shaking, and pulled out my phone. I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry, but you need to hear this. As the recording played, I watched her face off the screen. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock to something sharper, colder, not tears, not sadness, anger. Real, fierce anger on my behalf. She didn't flinch when Eleanor called her a distraction. She didn't react when my mother admitted to siphoning the money. But when Eleanor said I needed her control, Sarah's jaw locked. When it ended, she sat completely still for a long moment. Then she turned to me, eyes blazing with a fire I'd never seen. Your family doesn't just doubt me, she said quietly. They doubt you. They're destroying your dream so they can keep you under them. This isn't about money. This is about power. I felt my throat tighten. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier. I just didn't want you thinking I suspected. She cut me off with a small, pained laugh. Suspected me, Kenneth. I've been working myself into the ground to help you. She stood, walked to the bedroom, and returned with a folder of printed bank statements. This is what I didn't tell you. My breath caught. Alternate deposits every week. Small amounts, sometimes larger ones. 3 different sources. 3 different incomes. Sarah, what is this? She met my gaze, embarrassed, but proud. I picked up a 3rd job. Late night shift at the diner across from the hospital. I wanted to surprise you with a buffer fund for the clinic. I know how hard you work. How much does this mean to you? She flipped the page. The total amount took my breath away. It covered everything I lost more. I felt my chest crack open. My family stole from me. My wife built me back up in secret. That was the difference. I took her hands, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. We're going to confront them, I said, but not empty-handed. We need one final piece, something undeniable. She nodded. Then let's get it together. For the first time in a long time, I felt strong again, because now I wasn't facing them alone. We sat at the kitchen table with the city lights spilling through the blinds like a private audience. The plan felt simple in theory and dangerous in practice. We needed Eleanor to say out loud why she'd been sabotaging me. We needed a motive on tape. We needed a reaction that would make her reveal her true colors in front of witnesses. Make it bait, Sarah said, her voice steady. Something she can't resist? Money, prestige, control. Hit her where she lives. I called Mr. Davies with my heart hammering. He was the director at the clinic where I worked part-time, the man who'd noticed my work ethic and quietly mentored me. I explained the situation without the names, only the shape of it. A family feud, secret withdrawals, a manipulative matriarch. I asked for an unusual favor. Could he record a voicemail that sounded like an offer, a partnership track, prestige, and a financial sweetener if I agreed to stay with his program instead of starting my own clinic? There was a long pause on the line. Then Davy's voice, careful, firm, said Kenneth, "I know when someone's talent will change lives. I'm prepared to make an offer, a senior partnership track, a competitive salary, and a retention bonus we can put in writing. If you step away from the idea of a private clinic and commit to our program, I'll personally vouch for you and arrange significant funding to support your work here." He agreed without hesitation. He respected my work. He respected integrity. "Leave it with me," he said. "I'll record something credible, specific enough to make a point, but not so detailed it could be dismissed." The voicemail arrived 2 hours later, perfectly calibrated, professional, tempting, dangerously plausible. He mentioned a 6-figure retention bonus, a role with influence, and the caveat, the offer assumed I would forgo independent ownership for now. It was exactly the kind of promise that would make Eleanor's fingers twitch. We rehearsed the confrontation until the lines blurred in my head. Sunday felt too soon, and yet inevitable. We sent formal invitations under the pretense of a family meeting. An announcement, some small talk, anything to get them all in one room. All week, I half expected Eleanor to sense the trap. She didn't. She prepared her victory speech, polishing old grievances and excuses. Maria shifted nervously when I bumped into her at a grocery aisle, smiling too hard like someone carrying a guilty secret. When Sunday arrived, the house smelled of rosemary and varnish. The family gathered, Eleanor seated like a judge, Maria beside her, Chloe fidgeting, polite. I felt the weight of the recorder in my pocket like a talisman. I started the meeting with gratitude and thanks, letting Eleanor warm to the spotlight. Then, I let the voicemail play. Davy's voice filled the room, calm, authoritative, and entirely believable. A pause. Eleanor's face registered interest, then hunger. The trap had been set. But what I didn't know was, the days leading up to Sunday stretched like wires pulled too tight, ready to snap at the slightest tension. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's tear-stained face or Eleanor's cold smile. I bounced between anger so hot it felt radioactive and a hollow sadness that left my chest aching. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was the unraveling of a family I had foolishly believed was salvageable. Sarah anchored me. Every night, when I paced the living room rehearsing what I'd say, she'd gently take my hands and steady me. "Kenneth, remember why you're doing this," she whispered. "Not to hurt them. To free yourself." She reminded me that integrity, the thing Eleanor claimed to value but never lived by, was worth more than any trust fund or polished family reputation. She reminded me that what we were fighting for wasn't money. It was our future. Eleanor, however, radiated confidence. She called midweek with the air of someone who believed she had orchestrated an inevitable victory. "Kenneth," she said, her voice smooth as lacquer, "I'm relieved you've finally come to your senses about that little clinic fantasy. I knew you would." She didn't wait for my response. "I was thinking, since you're being reasonable again, might reinvest some funds into a more stable venture for you. Perhaps a real estate trust. Something respectable." I said nothing. She continued, undeterred. "And Sarah?" There was a pause, dripping condescension. "I have an opening at my charity. Administrative, of course. Filing, phone calls, basic work. I think it would give her structure, and perhaps teach her discipline." Her voice curled around the words like she was offering us salvation rather than shackles. The audacity made my skin prickle. I forced myself to respond evenly, light, distant, and cold. "Thank you, Grandma. I'll see you Sunday." Something in my tone rattled Maria. She called later, her voice trembling. "Kenneth, you sounded different. Is everything okay?" She was scared, but not for me. She was scared of Eleanor's reaction when the truth surfaced. "What's wrong, Mom?" I asked quietly. Her silence told me everything. She knew the confrontation was coming. She knew she was part of it. Eleanor dismissed Maria's concerns when she overheard the call. "He's just finally growing up," she said smugly, unaware of the storm she had walked into. By Saturday night, I had rehearsed my notes until the paper creased from sweat. Points about ambition, the value of hard work, the price of manipulation, the cost of love twisted into control. I didn't want to humiliate anyone. I wanted closure. But Eleanor didn't believe in closure, only in winning. As Sunday crept closer, I felt my pulse rise not from fear, but clarity. The game Eleanor thought she'd won had already shifted out of her hands. Sunday arrived with a kind of heaviness that sat on my shoulders like wet sand. Eleanor's estate looked the same as always, immaculate, imposing, polished to perfection. But something in the air felt charged, almost electric. Sarah squeezed my hand before we walked in, her touch steadying me. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "we face it together." Inside, everyone was already seated. Eleanor sat at the head of the long mahogany table, as if presiding over a royal court. Maria sat beside her, nervous and pale, twisting a tissue in her hands. Chloe scrolled on her phone, blissfully unaware of the war about to erupt. "Kenneth," Eleanor said warmly, with a counterfeit warmth, stiff and practiced. "I'm so proud of you. Finally letting go of that impractical clinic idea. Well, it shows maturity, responsibility. I knew you'd make the right choice." She began her victory lap, voice dripping with self-satisfaction. But I cut in. "Actually, Grandma," I said evenly, "before anything else, I need clarity. About my finances." Her smile tightened. Maria's hands froze. Chloe finally looked up. I reached into my bag and laid the printed bank statements on the table. Page after page lined with the same suspicious entry. "Fiduciary services fee." "Grandma," I said clearly, "why were you and Mom systematically draining my savings?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Maria's reaction was immediate. Her face crumpled as she burst into tears. "Kenneth, no, sweetheart, it's not what you think. I didn't mean—" She covered her mouth, shaking. But Eleanor didn't even blink. She folded her hands neatly in her lap, her expression cool and unreadable. "Kenneth," she said, the patronizing tone sliding back into place, "that account was being monitored, not drained." I stared at her. "Monitored. Thousands of dollars are gone." "It was for your own protection," she replied smoothly. "You were planning to waste everything on a risky business venture." And with him, she jabbed a finger toward Sarah, whispering in your ear, "Bleeding you. Someone had to intervene." Sarah inhaled sharply but held her composure. She'd expected this. Eleanor leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Kenneth, I did what any responsible matriarch would do. I safeguarded your future. That girl," she nodded, toward Sarah with thinly veiled disgust, "is a distraction. She sees your ambition as a wallet to drain." My jaw clenched. "Sarah has supported me more than anyone at this table ever has." "That's what gold diggers do," Eleanor snapped. "Pretend to support. Pretend to care. While they hollow you out from the inside." Maria let out a soft sob. Chloe's eyes widened, as if the gravity of the situation finally hit her. I looked directly at Eleanor. "So you admit you took the money?" Her lips curved into a cold smile. "I admit," she said slowly, "that I protected you." The air in the room felt thick, heavy with accusation, fear, and years of unspoken resentment. Sarah stepped forward, calm and steady, despite the venom Eleanor had just spat at her. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't lash out. She simply stood tall. "Mrs. Adams," she began softly, "I've never taken a single dollar from Kenneth. I've worked 3 jobs, late nights, early mornings, to help him build the clinic he's dreamed of since before I even knew him." Her voice didn't shake. Her dignity filled the room in a way Eleanor's wealth never could. "I've saved every spare cent," Sarah continued, "because I believe in him, because I love him, and because I want him to succeed, not for me, but for himself." Eleanor scoffed, but the confidence in her eyes wavered. That was my moment. I lifted my phone and looked directly into my grandmother's cold, calculating eyes. "You said Sarah was bleeding me dry," I said quietly. "You said I needed a stable, high-paying career, that I wasn't capable of succeeding without your money." I tapped play. Mr. Davies' voice filled the room, clear, authoritative, and professional. "Hi, Kenneth, it's Davies. I wanted to reiterate how thrilled the board is to offer you the partnership track position. It's a major step with full benefits, a significant signing bonus, and a mentorship directly under me. But, as I mentioned, it requires your commitment here. If you pursue your own clinic, we can't move forward with this offer." The message kept going, laying out numbers, respect, prestige, everything Eleanor claimed I lacked. Eleanor's hands tightened around the armrests of her chair. Her eyes widened, the mask beginning to crack. I paused the voicemail. "This offer proves I can succeed," I said, my voice stronger now. This proves my work, my talent, and my ambition are real without your money." Eleanor said nothing. But the real kicker. I leaned forward. "You didn't know about this offer when you started stealing from me." Her eyes flicker, the first sign of fear. "You didn't steal to protect me from Sarah. You didn't steal because you thought I was making a mistake. You stole because you wanted control. You stole because you wanted to crush my ambition before it outgrew your grip." Silence. No narrative you spin will change that. Then, without breaking eye contact, I pressed play again. This time, it wasn't Davy's voice. It was Eleanor's and Maria's, recorded from the study. Their voices are crystal clear. For his own good, Maria Eleanor snapped in the recording. "He doesn't need that girl or that clinic. He needs to stay where I can guide him." Maria whimpered. "But the money, Mother, this isn't right. It's already done." The last 3 words hit the table like thunder. Maria collapsed into a chair, sobbing openly. Chloe covered her mouth in shock. Sarah slipped her hand into mine. Eleanor stared, frozen near for the first time in her life. The room detonated into chaos the moment the recording ended. Eleanor lurched forward, her composure cracking like thin ice. "That isn't me. That recording is doctored. Give me that phone right now," she snapped, reaching across the table with shaking hands. I stepped back, holding the phone firmly against my chest. "It's already been sent to my lawyer," I said, my voice calm but cold, "and to the bank's fraud department. Destroying my phone won't save you." Eleanor froze mid-ridge, her hand hovering in the air before curling slowly into a trembling fist. I turned to my mother. "Mom, why?" My voice broke on that single word. Maria's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she covered her mouth, shaking. "I didn't want to," she whispered. "Your grandmother said. She said she would cut me off. She said she would expose the thing from years ago. The thing I never told you or your sister about." A cold chill crawled up my spine. A secret, a threat, a lifetime of manipulation, condensed into a single trembling confession. "So you stole from me." My voice wasn't angry. It was simply broken. Maria sobbed harder, nodding, unable to speak. Across the room, Chloe stood abruptly. My little sister, quiet, observant Chloe, looked at Eleanor with eyes full of disgust. "I knew it," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "You did the same thing to me. You guided me into a career I never wanted. You threatened to cut my trust fund unless I followed your plan. You even tried to keep me away from my friends because they weren't good enough." Eleanor's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. "I'm done," Chloe declared, her voice rising with every word. "Done with your control. Done with your money. Done with you." She walked over and stood beside me and Sarah, forming a united front of 3 people who had finally opened their eyes to the same monster. For the first time, Eleanor looked small, not powerful, not untouchable. Small. I took a deep breath and spoke directly, clearly, with no room for misinterpretation. "Grandma, I'm not pressing criminal charges against Mom." Maria gasped in relief, but I held up a hand. "But only under one condition." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "You will repay every dollar you stole," I continued, "with interest," and I added, voice steady as iron. "You will sign legally binding documents relinquishing any future involvement, control, or claim over my life and Sarah's lives, financial or otherwise." Eleanor stared at me, stunned. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had challenged her authority. But at that moment, the power she'd clung to for decades slipped through her fingers. She realized she had no leverage left. None. Eleanor arrived the next morning with none of her usual grandeur. No pearls, no tailored suit, no commanding posture. Just a frail woman clutching a leather folder, her expression carved from defeat. It was the first time I had ever seen her without the armor of superiority. The signing was clinical. My lawyer slid the documents across the table, page after page outlining repayment, interest penalties, and the complete severance of her financial authority over my life. Eleanor's hands trembled as she signed each line, not from age, but from the collapse of the empire she had spent decades constructing on manipulation and fear. When the final signature was done, she pushed the folder away. "There," she whispered, "you have your money, all of it." But she was wrong. I didn't have my money. I had something far more valuable. I had my freedom, The bank transfer hit the next morning. Every stolen dollar, plus thousands in penalty interest. The number on the screen should have exhilarated me, but it didn't. Instead, what brought real relief was Sarah's smile when I told her we were whole again. "We did it," she said softly, squeezing my hand. "No," I corrected her, pulling her close. "You did it. Your buffer fund saved us. Your belief in me saved us." For the first time, I understood wealth wasn't measured by digits on a bank app. It was measured by loyalty, by integrity, by the person who stayed when others plotted behind your back. It hit me then. My family never doubted my ability to succeed. They feared what would happen when I no longer needed them. A few days later, I visited Mr. Davies at the clinic. His office smelled faintly of eucalyptus and antiseptic, familiar, comforting scents. "I wanted to thank you," I told him, for the voicemail, for trusting me, and for believing I could do more. He leaned back, studying me with the same thoughtful look he used when evaluating difficult patient cases. "So," he said, "have you given any thought to the partnership offer?" I took a deep breath. It would have been an easy life, stable, prestigious, safe. But safety wasn't why I got into physical therapy. I wanted to build something of my own, something honest, something that represented who I was. "I'm turning it down," I said. Davies smiled aught with disappointment, but with pride. "I was hoping you'd say that," he replied, "because I have something better, a mentorship, and an introduction to an investor who backs entrepreneurs with integrity." For a moment, I couldn't speak. All the pain, betrayal, and heartache had led her to a door that wouldn't have opened without the fire I'd walked through. The universe wasn't punishing me, it was positioning me. The months that followed were a blur, austing, exhilarating, life-shifting in every way. Sarah and I spent our mornings touring commercial spaces and our evenings crunching numbers at our tiny kitchen table. And then, one Friday afternoon, we stepped into a sunlit suite on the corner of Maple and 3rd. A wide room with tall windows, scuffed floors, and the faint scent of old paint. "This is it," Sarah whispered, fingers intertwined with mine. And it was. Using her buffer fund as the final down payment felt symbolic of her love and sacrifices, literally anchoring the foundation of our future. We signed the lease, and just like that, the cornerstone was born. We chose the name not because it sounded professional, but because it meant everything. A cornerstone is the first stone laid, the one that determines the strength and direction of the entire structure. Our marriage, tested by betrayal, strengthened by truth, was that stone. Chloe joined us immediately, eager to reshape her life outside Eleanor's shadow. She became our first volunteer coordinator, bringing her warmth and enthusiasm to every interaction. For the first time, I saw the sibling bond we'd never been. Allowed to fully explore now, blooming freely without the weight of manipulation. One evening, after painting the accent wall a calming shade of forest green, I sat at the desk and opened my laptop. It was time. I began writing the final letter to the two women who had shaped and nearly shattered my life. The letter to Maria came first. I forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because I needed to let go. I told her I understood the fear Eleanor used to control her, but I needed distance to heal. "When you're ready to choose your own voice," I wrote, "my door will be open." Eleanor's letter was different. It was honest, sharp, and final. "You tried to break me," I wrote. "You tried to take my ambition, my marriage, my future. But control is not love. Fear is not family. And your attempts to sabotage me only forged my resolve." I slipped a photograph of the cornerstone sign into the envelope, a silent message. "You lost. Not because I defeated you, but because I learned to live without you." That night, Sarah and I brought takeout to the clinic, 2 chairs, 1 folding table, and an ocean of dreams. The room echoed as we laughed, imagining where treadmills would go, where the treatment rooms would be, and how many people we would help. "This feels like the first real breath I've taken in years," I admitted. Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. "You built this, Kenneth, not with money, with heart." I looked at her, who woman Eleanor called a gold digger, but she wasn't a parasite. She was my partner, my anchor, my greatest champion. What I didn't know was, the journey wasn't finished yet. The morning the Cornerstone Physical Therapy officially opened, I stood in the doorway before unlocking it, letting the moment settle in my chest like a long-awaited breath. Sunlight spilled across the polished floors, reflecting off the fresh paint and new equipment. The clinic wasn't just a building, it was proof. Proof that resilience beats control. Proof that love beats manipulation. Proof that ambition, when rooted in integrity, can survive anything. Clients began trickling in almost immediately. Police, officers recovering from on-duty injuries, elderly patients needing balance training, and young athletes nursing sprains. I found myself thriving, not just as a clinician, but as the business owner I had always dreamed of becoming. For the first time in years, I felt aligned with my purpose, my values, and the life Sarah and I were creating. Sarah flourishes too. She quit her late-night shifts and took over the clinic's administration. Watching her move from client calls to scheduling systems to insurance paperwork with calm confidence made me see her in a new light. Not just as my wife, but as my partner in every sense of the word. Together, we were unstoppable. One quiet afternoon, as I was reorganizing the treatment room, my phone buzzed with an unexpected notification. A message from my mother, Maria. For a moment, I froze. Her text was simple, but it carried the weight of generations. Kenneth, I'm sorry. I'm finally getting help. Therapy. I want to be better. For myself, and someday, for you. I sat down, letting the words wash over me. It wasn't a plea, a justification, or an excuse. It was the first real, honest acknowledgement she had ever given me. A small step, but a meaningful one. Hope stirred aught naive hope. Not forgiveness without accountability, but hope on my terms. Hope that maybe one day we could rebuild something healthier than what Eleanor had shaped us into. As the clinic lights dimmed at sunset, I found myself reflecting on everything we had endured. The theft, the lies, the manipulation, the heartbreak had all been devastating. But it had also carved something sharp and necessary into me: clarity. I learned that justice wasn't about punishing those who wronged me. It was about reclaiming my story, choosing honesty over silence, and building a life so strong that no amount of outside malice could shake it. My greatest inheritance wasn't money. It wasn't land. It wasn't reputation. It was courage. The courage to choose integrity over comfort, love over control, and truth over legacy. That evening, Sarah and I sat in the middle of the clinic, a single lamp glowing between us. We raised our glasses, toasting to everything behind us and everything ahead. Our first child, Sarah whispered, touching her stomach with a hopeful smile. And the expansion, I added, imagining future rooms filled with healing and purpose. The next chapter was beginning to be built not from what had been stolen from us, but from what we had chosen to create. And this time, no one could take it away. If you've ever had to choose between toxic family loyalty and your own truth, hit the like button. Subscribe to follow our journey as we build the cornerstone, proving that integrity always wins. And share this story to remind others that sometimes the people closest to you are the very ones you must protect yourself from the most.